Peace, everybody. A few updates. February 2022, we teamed up with Chino BYI to produce sticker packs and a limited run of signed prints. Hand signed, the print features Chino in the late 90s in the Lafayette Ave station and measures 11 by 17. Both the prints and sticker packs are available only through our Patreon, and we ship out our monthly products to all of our members. The prints and stickers come together while supplies last. We have new members-only interviews out from Dual Risk Crew, Wayne COD, and GS Landlords. Our Patreon members get our monthly products as well as access to our episode library, featuring interviews from Host 18, Cash 4, XSM, Sake, Les YKK, GS Landlords, Dual Risk Crew, and Wayne COD. Patreon members are updated on what's coming next, what episodes we're going to be recording next, and have the ability to ask us any questions on Patreon for upcoming episodes. Patreon members also gain access to members-only episodes of Z and I talking about a range of topics from graffiti to books to mental health to what's going on in New York and the world as a whole. We also have a lower tier membership now that features everything I just stated minus the products that we ship out to all of our members on the OG tier. The link to our Patreon is in this episode's description, our Instagram bio, and our website. Immense thank you as always to everyone who supports the show. Without you, none of this would be possible. Enjoy the episode. Peace. Thank you so much. I'm super hyped to be here right now. So you're originally from Ambato, Ecuador. You grew up in the rainforest, climbing trees, killing snakes with your bare feet at 5 years old. Why did your family initially migrate to America, and what was it like to go through that?
I came to the United States in 1972. I was about 7 years old. So my mother migrated to America with just two little girls in tow, myself, my sister, who was 8 years old. She wanted to get away from my father, my real father. He was a architectural engineer and a womanizer and a gambler, and he was already married. He had kids, and my mother was his mistress. So when she'd had enough of his nonsense, she went back to her family that is from the rainforest near Puyo in Ecuador. They have a plantation there. She went back to her mother and with her two little girls in tow. So I grew up there for a few years in the rainforest. But my father kept chasing her and loving her, and she had enough. So she saved up enough money and took herself to New York City. She had a brother here, a couple cousins. But we flew into JFK Airport. We didn't climb no silly wall. We just overstayed our tourist visa, and we're still here almost 50 years later.
Yeah. My parents did the same thing from Ecuador as well. So it was interesting, like when I was reading up and just seeing like where you came from. Do you have memories since you came here at 7 years old of life when it was like in Ecuador?
I do remember little bits and pieces, and how much I love the rainforest and the jungle, which is probably why I always have so many animals and pets and house plants. Always trying to recreate the jungle in my own home. So I do have little bits of memories, but not that much.
Yeah.
I do have memories of first arriving to the U.S. and some of the trauma we endured being Latin kids at the hand of white kids. My mother put us in Catholic school because that's what you do in South America, is Catholic school for everyone. She put us in the nearest Catholic school that was just all white kids, and they were so mean to us. We didn't speak any English. It took a couple years to learn English as kids, and we would go home crying from school, and we ended up cutting school, which was terrible. And the nuns came to the house to speak to my mother about it, why we weren't showing up. And she was working in the garment district. So, no one was watching us. So we were just starting to cut school as the white kids were so terrible. She pulled us out of Catholic school and put us in public school that had lots of Latin kids, Puerto Rican kids. Everyone spoke Spanish. We fit right in. We learned English real quick. It only took a couple of years for me to learn some street smarts, and I went back to that Catholic school by the time I was 12, and I kicked some ass. I did.
So when you came here and you didn't know English and you had to learn it. You learned it essentially just by living in America?
By watching television. I learned English just by watching television and the cartoons and such. That was a huge help. So when I first started speaking, I did speak a little bit like Bugs Bunny, I gotta admit.
Do you have memories of when you arrived here did you have like this some sort of image of what life in America would be like, and then you arrived to Queens, correct?
No, we arrived to Brooklyn,
Okay.
to Greenpoint, Brooklyn, and Greenpoint, Brooklyn was just peppered with working class Polish people. It was quite boring, quite dull. Not like it is now. Greenpoint, Brooklyn is just teeming with young people and art and all kinds of hip stuff, and no one could afford to live there anymore. But that's where we first arrived for a few years, and that's where I first started writing graffiti. And the image before me is my first graffiti master. He taught me style. He taught me how to handle letters. He taught me that there is style, and you got to do it correctly if you don't want to embarrass all your friends before you put it out on the streets. So he taught me that, and we were still in junior high school, and this was in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. And in 79, when I just started, my mom bought a house in Queens. So we then moved in Queens, and I lost touch with my friends in Brooklyn.
It's so crazy, thinking of the era that you came up writing graffiti, and in comparison to the era that I grew up in and the era that we're living in now. That era is super like seen as like the golden era. It's definitely glorified. It's the trains, the music, the dancing, and everything that was happening all at once. What do you think about the fact that when you started writing, it was during this era that is like stuff of movies, stuff of legends and history?
Well, when you're living it, you never realize that is that important or that it's legendary or that it's going to be anything at any point. You just think you're just fucking around. Nobody cares. And then you'll move on and grow up and have a life. You don't think that you're making history or paving the way for anybody else. You're just having a good time as a kid. You're not there as an activist. You were not thinking 10 moves ahead. Certainly not. We were just having fun.
When you were in the famous documentaries that you're in, when you see that, when it was happening, you didn't, it was just like fuck it, it was just some whatever interview with no idea of what it was going to become.
No, absolutely not.
Or what about like that first commission painting you did when you were like 16, I believe, for $500? Did you
No,
ever
it wasn't a
think
commission painting. It was an exhibit.
an exhibit?
So that was an exhibit over at the new museum.
Hmm. And did you?
So no, I had no idea. At first, the first exhibit was in Fashion Moda at the end of 1980, and that was just over a dozen guys, and I was the only female. Immediately, we were in PS1. That's over in Queens, and PS1 is part of Museum of Modern Art now, and followed by what was I saying? Yeah, the new museum. So it was exhibit after exhibit after exhibit. We had to keep producing artwork. The older guys were doing artwork. So as soon as I sold my first painting, it was like, ka-ching. This was easy. This was really easy money. It took me a couple hours to whip up this gorgeous 6-foot orchid. And it sold so quickly, so easy. I was like, I'm going to do this again. I'm going to keep doing it until people no longer want to buy it, and we'll ride that gravy train. And everyone was telling us it could just be a fad. It could just, blow over. The art market's very fickle. Every other year they change direction and find something else fascinating and interesting, and then we'll be left by the side. So, go with it, sell your work, and we were too young to think any further than just the next exhibit and so on.
Do you justify the glorification of the era that you came out in, or do you see it as an era that also had its version of problems that wasn't problem free, and it didn't seem that way as you were going through it?
Sure, every era is glorified. Decades later, you only see the fun and the good stuff and the and things that have stuck around, and every era has its problems and issues. And when I came up, the streets were not safe, certainly not safe for women, and a whole lot of things was not happening for women. So there was a lot of battling going on and stuff. It's a little bit easier in some areas now for ladies to get involved. But in my time, a lot of sexism, a lot of hostility. I had to fight and claw and get my respect the hard way. So, there's always that. Each era has its drawbacks. New York City was hugely dangerous. I had to, even to just go meet my friends in the middle of the night in the worst neighborhood ever, I had to pack a knife. And I had to pull out that knife and start cleaning my fingernails because guys get too friendly. they get too amorous, they get too clingy, or on those long subway rides to the train yards. I had to pack a knife just to scare guys away, and they would just think that I have to be insane. I'm out in the middle of the night packing a knife all by my little self. I have to be insane, so they'd go away.
Yeah, sneaking into train yards and just pretty much going to places where even if it's not in a dangerous time period in a dangerous neighborhood, that act in itself is something of danger.
Yes, it's always dangerous going underground or someplace. You never know what you're going to find. You know what you find in dark alleys in New York City? Yeah, you don't want to know. You don't want to know. You just shake your spray can and hope they don't kill you. So I'm just doing graffiti. Please don't kill me. It's crazy. It's dangerous at all times. You never know what's going to happen to you. If the police don't get you, the bad guys will. So
You said in some video that's the nature of the game. It really isn't a game, and some of the experience that you've been through, it's not part of a game. It's actually, like we're saying, a pretty dangerous part of your life, and things that shaped who you are, shaped your art, and led you to become who you are. And my question is, do you think that graffiti as a whole is a largely positive or a largely negative thing? Which one do you think it is?
I think it's a positive thing. I think because it is an act of rebellion, and rebellion is a necessary thing in our society. Otherwise, it goes stagnant. Otherwise, no one's questioning the status quo and everyone turns into sheep. There has to be rebellion when things and the population and the masses feel that it must be so. And I think that art was taking a terrible direction that the masses did not like. It was just for the elite, for the cultured few. It was becoming a commodity, just like the stock market. It didn't matter what it looked like. It just mattered the artist's career and that the value was going to go up on some piece of crap that they kept in storage because it was too hideous to hang in their own home. So is that art, really? And it's just like, splashes of color that have no meaning. It's just a matter of the artist's career and would the value go up. So, and it isn't the context of what it is. It's just who you know. So the value goes up. And that's not art. And it was only being appreciated by the cultured few, and I mean by the 1%, who has the time to go to museums and galleries and frequent these establishments. Certainly my family didn't, just, working class, just trying to make ends meet and such. They did not have time to go to all these establishments and institutions and appreciate fine art in its context where it is. Why can't art be out in the street for the masses, made by the masses? So street art became that answer. What was the question?
The question is whether you think graffiti is largely positive or negative.
And again, going back to the nature of rebellion, this country was founded on rebellion. Those free thinkers, our founding fathers, decided to rebel against Britain because the masses wanted it so. So I believe that graffiti is important. It serves a purpose for those extreme sports dudes that need to go out and paint things that don't belong to them, no matter what age they are. They just want the thrill and excitement and the adrenaline. They feed off it, like firemen and policemen who need that adrenaline jolt to know that they are alive. Like extreme sports dudes, they leap off mountains or whatever because I don't know why. They need to feel alive, so they almost barely die or whatever. They need the adrenaline. You can't give them permission walls. You can't give them daytime stuff. It's not the same kind of rush. So there are guys who keep it pure, keep it real. They're still doing freight trains that go from city to city. And that's where graffiti is still alive and well. It is alive and well in other countries as well. There's subway trains painted and trolleys and all kinds of stuff. Guys in every corner of the world are breaking the law, and just with paint. We're not killing anyone. We're not robbing anyone. It's just a little paint. It's not. But it is the act of rebellion that is important. It'll give young people that opportunity to sow some wild oats. That's an old-fashioned saying of, you got to get your wild out while you're young before you settle down and get married and just chill later on. You're going to want to chill, but if you need to do that. I had two sisters. They did not feel the need to go out and be wild and rebel and climb out the window with a bunch of crazy dudes and go do crazy stuff. They... one of my sisters tagged along once or twice because the guys were awfully, awfully good looking. But aside from that, it was crazy madness.
So what do you think it did for you, this act of rebellion and this freedom of expression, when you started? You're just getting to know the world in an era filled with art and culture, in a place that's considered by many around the world to be one of the epicenters of art and culture, the birth of this movement. What do you think it did for you?
Well, as a very young one, it took a very shy girl and brought me out. I was always even too shy to lift my hand in class when I knew the answers to everything. So I wouldn't even speak in class. I was really shy. And then when I kissed my first boy at 13 and started smoking weed at 13, and then I became blossomed into a whole new person. Well, my grades went down. I started cutting school, hanging out with a different crowd, learning graffiti. It gave me confidence. It gave me courage. I developed perhaps a second personality, one that of a tough girl and a street thug rather than a well brought up young lady that I was. So, because I guess art school, well brought up young ladies wasn't as acceptable underground. So I had to develop a street thug kind of an attitude and, really, really mean and cruel and vicious and all of that wonderful stuff.
It seems like in that time period, like if you partake in these crowds and these groups, like your chances of getting into situations where your life is at risk seems really high. But it's funny how being also in these groups and knowing the street smarts also saves you in a lot of situations. Like you said, like you know how to feel out the streets, you know how to feel out people, you know where to go, what to look out for. So in a way, it is like a positive thing to, have the balance, like you said, have like a second personality that like knows about that, instead of just being stuck in one world where you don't know about that life, but it does exist and you can't deny it, especially in that time period.
So the way I say that graffiti was our education, and what it taught us is a lot of is confidence. It taught us courage. It taught us no nonsense. It taught us how to get the job done despite fear. Your knees could be shaking, your heart in your throat, but you're still creating. You're still doing straight lines. This is like boot camp for artists. It's like when they teach you how to shoot and you're a good marksman and you hit the target, that's great. But then they send you to war and you're like, people are screaming, your buddy gets shot, you're slipping on blood, you're shaking like hell, and you still have to try to hit your target. That's how boot camp for artists is, trying to do graffiti underground. You're scared to death, but you still got to represent and do your thing. And very, very few artists ever have to risk their lives and work with such fear that they keep on going. And then I'd heard about like the plein air painters. These are these crazy cats who stand with an easel in the middle of an icy stream with bears walking around because they need to paint some scenic nonsense or another. And that is crazy. The extreme weather, the predators, they could die just trying to do a little oil painting.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever turns you on. So, and then there's the graffiti writers. Kids have died, and we know that going in. We are trained by masters. We know the history. We learn what was what, who died, how they died, and don't let that happen to you.
And your family, when they found out, how did they find out that you wrote graffiti? Because I'm just thinking about like my family and oh my God. So how was that? Especially like the way the Ecuadorian culture is, and being a female out in the streets writing graffiti, they're gonna be like, So how was that?
No, my mother always worried that they found out early on what I was doing. So they learned I was sneaking out the window. We lived in a private house. I had to do like a 8-9 foot jump out the window. I'd lower my bag of paint, jump after it, put on my painting clothes and head out. But try to come back in before my mother woke up. Sometimes I'd make it. Sometimes I wouldn't make it. She'd know I was sneaking out. She'd be crying all night, not sleeping, worried about me, and go to work worried about me. Everything. She was always worried, But then they supported me when I was doing the galleries. Absolutely. They came to the gallery openings. My stepfather drove my big paintings on top of the car to the next gallery. And, they stood around with all these crazy artsy people looking all weird and bizarre. And they're just regular folks, But they came to the openings. They supported me completely. My mother always collected all the newspaper articles and taped the TV shows and everything. So very, very proud.
How was it transferring, or I mean, not even transferring, because you've been painting outside of graffiti pretty much since you started writing graffiti. But what do you think that graffiti did for your art practice when you're painting canvases and using different mediums that have nothing to do with, or like spray paint or in train yards and stuff like that?
Well, I've been painting with brushes since I was a teenager. Since high school, I've got some of my best work in the Museum of the City of New York. Paintings I've done at the age of 18. One of them is hanging up there like that, above the coffee machine. That little thing I've painted at the age of 18. I could do buildings, I could do people, I could do, almost like a masterpiece of work at that young age. So in New York City, you can't spray paint all year long. So I developed the brush skills, and half the year I work with brushes and acrylics on canvas, and the other half I do with more spray paint and outdoor murals and big canvases with spray paint. So, the transition was pretty easy. It's the scale that some people can't handle. When you're working small, you require a lot more patience, a lot more focus. When it's spray paint, it happens quick, it happens large, it happens, instantaneous, instant gratification. With the brushwork, you have to stick with it. So perhaps art school taught me that, although I cut a lot of art school. But, painting since early on, taking jobs, taking commissions has taught me a very strong work ethic. So, I come in here at 10 a.m. I've got many assistants at work. We work 8 hours a day. I quit by 6. I go back to the house. So we put in good, long, steady hours, no messing around. And I've been doing this for 40 years.
So every day you paint?
Yes. I rarely get the time off. I rarely have time for myself. And oh my goodness, this piece is leaving in the morning to China. It's not finished. I'm going to have to finish this later on tonight when you guys leave. I have this to do, his nose, his lips to do, and then it's done. So there's just very little. I think I'll put in an hour later on, but they're coming to get this in the morning. And I've always got deadlines and pressures and exhibits and stuff. I've got a commission by some wealthy guy to do some really, really intense pieces, but there's no deadline on that. It's just a private collector. That's great. But most often than not, I've got project after project, deadline after deadline, and such. So I come in here. I try to take weekends off sometimes, but it doesn't really work. Sometimes I work from months on end. I don't see daylight.
How does the dynamic shift when you're doing something that is your passion for a job, and then you feel like you don't have time to yourself?
I don't know if I feel much passion for much.
Really? So when you're painting,
work is work.
When you're painting, you don't feel like that's your passion anymore?
I guess. I suppose it would be better than doing anything else. It's exhausting. But I do it well, and it's just so it.
What are the mediums that you typically work with? You doing like oil?
I don't work with oils. I'm afraid not. No, just acrylics and then spray paint.
Okay. How come you don't work with oils?
Because it's just a whole different animal. I don't have that kind of patience. It takes a long time to dry. You make any mistakes. It's learning how to paint in a whole different kind of way than you do with acrylics. So I tried to work with oils, and I felt like an amateur. Wasn't the same kind of thing, and plus it takes a long time to dry. No one's got that kind of patience.
That's why those plein air people are really crazy, because like they're doing it with oil. It's not drying, wet on top of wet. They just like I think it's Alla Prima. They do it all at once. It's crazy. And then in the situations, the light is changing as they're doing it. It's so crazy.
And then so they have to keep either coming back or do it quick and all of that. So yeah.
How much what did they teach you in art school, and did you completed it, or how was that?
No, I went to art high school.
Okay.
And that you have to pick a major, and my major was architecture. So no, I did not take painting. I did not do that life drawing or painting or any of that stuff. I went right to architecture. I said my real father was an architectural engineer. I have 2 half brothers in Ecuador who are architectural engineers. They have a company, they build buildings, they do that kind of stuff. And I have a knack for architecture and engineering. So what I didn't have is the kind of patience to do all that mathematics and drafting as a 16-year-old. So I would cut school all the time. And although I would go to school, I would spend 4 hours in the lunchroom and 1 hour in the ladies' room and then call it a day.
Wow. In terms of art school, do you think that if someone wants to be a successful artist, they want to put their heart into it, that they need that?
Okay, of course, everyone needs to go to art school if you are majoring and if that is what is important to you is the profession that you choose. Architecture, of course, you have to go to school. Fashion designing, yes, you have to go to school. And many other fields, you do have to go to art school. For fine art, sometimes art school will mess up your original style, and what comes out will be what your teacher and all the other students are doing. So sometimes it does you a disservice. To be a successful artist, it isn't as much as what you're doing, it's also as important that who you know. So you got to get out there young. Don't waste your time in your youth in art school and racking up a debt for that, but go out there, galleries, meet people, meet other artists, meet gallery collectors and dealers, and get your stuff out there and learn how to go about that, the hard way. Art school isn't going to prepare you nearly as much to be a fine artist. You go in with an original style, you come out with something watered down and diluted. And from what I understand, other professors have told me, not my own professors, but people I know out in the real world and who happen to be professors in universities, they've said that it takes about 10 years to get rid of what art school does to you.
Wow.
So that is literally a thing. Do not let art school mess up your original style. It's really, really hard to hang on to that. Sure, if you need to fine tune certain mediums, you need to learn ceramics, you want to learn sculpture, you want to learn something like that, take some classes. But to learn fine art, you just got to practice, 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 get a body of work, and hustle your butt. You have to learn to hustle more than actually doing the art. So it's not even 50-50, pretty pictures and business. You got to learn to hustle. You got to learn to have a thick skin, and you got to learn how to take rejection. So, graffiti taught us all of that. Taught us how to be completely distant, still hold your head up high and say, oh, fuck those people. I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do. So I've seen kids from art school come out. The first rejection, they're crushed. They want to kill themselves. They'll never do art again. They're going to go work for McDonald's. Oh my God. They can't take a no for an answer, or you're going to get 30% of the jobs you go for. So just suck it up, pick yourself off the floor, stop crying, and just get out there and apply for your next job. This is said the same thing to actors, musicians, and entertainers. Is you go to a gazillion auditions and maybe you'll get one. So just keep going.
So it's so strange that it would be like that, because it's like the professors who are at the school who are changing your style up and just watering it down. They, in theory, would have a passion for the arts and would have a passion for teaching what they know and fueling creativity, you would think. So why do you think that happens? That
I don't know.
Maybe just
I just do art. I don't analyze shit. I don't know.
So then how did you learn how to paint like this? It's just all self-taught?
Just self-taught, man. Just mostly self-taught. So I paid off my first house by running a mural company with my husband and doing all kinds of interiors in high-end restaurants, nightclubs, all kinds of businesses. So we would paint big murals indoors in all kinds of styles, everything from the old masters from centuries ago to modern, contemporary, weird, freaky stuff to street art to whatever. We would paint all styles, and I would lie and say, sure, I could do that. No problem. I'd go home and figure that out and learn it, practice it, so that when I come in, I'd look like I know what I'm doing. So, being versatile is important to be successful. You cannot get anywhere if you could only do one thing, one style. If you could only do just letters, just fonts, you're not going to get very far. So the fact that I could do scenic stuff and people and portraits and letters and fonts and just about everything in all kinds of styles, I had a huge collection of books before the internet even came out of all kinds of different styles and other artists. And the local library, their art section was my art section. So I had access to look at other art, figure it out, learn it, had a restaurant that they needed Art Deco style. Like, what the hell is Art Deco? So I learned it, master it, figure it out, and I can whip it out like I'm from the 1920s, so yeah, all kinds of that.
So when you're working at a scale that big, like I'm talking about like some of the murals that you've worked on when it's just huge, and you've just self-taught yourself that maybe early on, like the night before, you didn't feel any type of nervousness, or even just learning how you said you have to hustle as much, because essentially you're self-employed. You're your own boss, and you have to make it happen for yourself. No one's going to sit there and tell you how or what to do. And your measure of success and how far you get is all going to depend on what you take it upon yourself to do.
Right, exactly. So when the opportunities and the door was not knocking and the money was not rolling in, you got to make your own opportunities. Go out there and knock on doors, make phone calls, talk cold to strangers, walk in a shop and say, I can do some amazing work and increase your business by 50%. So give me all your money. And I'd walk out with a job. I'd be like, oh my God. And then the job would be too big for me. So I'd have to call my friend, make my husband quit his job. He's like, oh my God, bring the whole team out. This is humongous. I don't know what I got myself into. So, make your own opportunities. So for beginning muralists, for beginning artists, go out there and paint a school, a nursery, a old people's home, some needy animal shelter, whatever. Make the news, make the newspaper, get your name out there, be seen in a good way. Not in a terrible way, like it took 6 cops to bring him down. He was fighting. No, none of that. But, do some good deed for your community so that, you get your name out there. Learn how to hustle. Learn how to submit your artwork to galleries. Learn how to have a proper resume and all of that kind of stuff if you want to be a successful artist. So there's a lot to learn. But now that with internet, just go out there, but you gotta hustle. You gotta learn how to make your own money. Yes, I've been freelancing since the very beginning. I've never ever had a 9-to-5 job working for other people or anything like that. I've been the boss of my own company all this time as well. My husband is my executive assistant, and now I employ 3 other young people that work and do creative stuff, office work, all of that stuff. So.
Wow. I just have to say that when I speak to people like you and you talk about like all the possibilities that exist as long as you like dedicate yourself and work hard, which are 2 seemingly simple topics. Everyone says dedicate yourself and work hard, but fewer are the people who actually apply it. And when they do, it's crazy the things they can do. Like you would think that, you sold a painting you got a painting at 16, well, that'll only last for that one painting. But then you said, I'm going to stretch it out until it, the wheels fall off and you're still doing it, and it's something inspiring. And I think that the people who are listening to this, who are unsure of what to do, or youth that want to pursue art in any type of way, or even their own thing, like this completely applies to it.
Yeah, people have even art school has neglected to help you out in surviving in the real world, knowing your value. What is your value? What should you be paid? What should you charge for said painting, photo, or whatever like that? You just don't know. Kids just don't know. So, one thing that was very helpful is belonging to the graffiti community. I wasn't alone. I had my homeboys with me. I had the older guys looking out for me, people like, Futura and Dondi and Lee and Crash and Days. And they're still my friends today, except for Dondi, who has passed on. Zephyr and all of these guys, we're all still in touch. We all help each other. We network. We always, I'll give each other tips like work for this, don't work for that gallery. These people are dishonest, or these people are sharks. They want to exploit you, or, they don't pay. They're real nice folks, but they don't pay. So stay away. All kinds of networking and knowing each other. And it's almost like belonging to a guild. So whatever country you go to, you've got connections, you've got friends, you've got walls and paint and galleries and stuff going on because, you belong to the graffiti community and you move up in the hierarchy and you're well respected. So more doors are open to you. You're not alone. So I'm not navigating this world alone. Most regular artists are. Most street artists are, but we are very, very tribal, very clannish. We stick together. We're like, you always got some friends. You always got somebody that can hook you up, help you out.
I think that a pure street artist might not be able to, in terms of what's backing the person. They won't be able to compare with someone who's been painting trains in New York City, someone who is known and backed up by the graffiti community. They won't be able to. It's going to be harder. It's definitely something under your belt to have that been your roots.
Well, yes, but then there's a lot of other street artists who have broken ground, like Banksy. He didn't do any subway trains or anything like that, but gets maximum respect. And then there's other guys like that who did not do subway trains, but they've paid their dues. They do such amazing, kick-ass work, that they get, maximum respect around the world and stuff. Some of the ladies as well, they've moved on and now they're doing gigantic 10-story buildings and all sorts of, but everyone's got their roots like that, and not everyone's broken the law either. Is that a measure for a street artist also? How many laws did you break? How many arrests you have under, does that count? That doesn't really count. So, a street artist is a street artist. The difference between a typical traditional muralist and a street artist is that a traditional muralist requires funding and requires to have someone approve the design that is going up. So there's other cooks in the kitchen there. They can edit or change your design. You don't have complete freedom to paint whatever the hell you want because someone is paying for it. Street artists don't have to fly their design by nobody, and they don't require funding either. We're self-funded. We have a lot more freedom to paint whatever we want when we're given the permission, and we can do whatever the hell. Of course, you do have to be sensitive to the community, and sometimes you just can't put up, political and social things because the landlords require that. No. It's like you can have it for free, you can do whatever you want, just don't do nothing crazy. No political, religious, crazy nonsense. I have to live here, neighbors live here. Just give me a pretty wall, something. And then we have freedom to do whatever. That's the difference between a traditional muralist. And I do traditional murals. I have to work with clients. I have to paint nonsense that I don't like for people that I like even less. But they pay really, really, really well. And a job is a job. I never have to see them again. I don't have to see the space again. And, I go laughing to the bank.
Yeah. How's it been to move from the city to here? And what prompted this?
The police are just terrible. The Vandal squad. So we had one too many raids in my house. We had a Vandal squad raided us in 2003 in Queens, and then they raided us in 2013. Really? Again, with a flimsy warrant, they come to the door, they get in, they take everything we have, and they fuck over our lives. So the last time they came with a SWAT team truck out in front of my house. All our neighbors thought we were the most upstanding citizens. They loved us. Then they see a SWAT team truck out there. Then they see me coming out in handcuffs, and I sit in the car with a policewoman for an hour. But they brought me back inside, and they took off the handcuffs when I promised to play nice. But I had to sit there for 4 hours and watch the police rob me. Again, they just fill up a van with, this time they took all my spray paint, almost like 1,000 cans of paint. They took that, photo albums. They took my computers this time. They took books off the shelf, artwork off the walls. They just took all they can lift, and just to fuck us over. And they took my husband as well with some fake graffiti charges, made up shit. So it took, a very expensive attorney, about 1.5 years, to get them to drop the charges. No crime committed. Oh, well, they have to give all that stuff back.
But you still went through that.
Yeah, we still had to go to court. He had to go to court. I wasn't charged with anything. I wasn't arrested. He was. But still, they can take all our stuff and mess with us. And this is what they did in 2003 as well. It took over 1 year to get about 90% of the stuff back. They kept what they wanted. So, again, spending money on an expensive attorney, waiting to be raided. We never kept our stuff in our house because we always expected those fucks to raid us. And they did. But luckily, we never kept anything incriminating in our house ever because of that. They just get flimsy warrants, and they've messed with other artists too. Whoever's got the nerve to prosper and do well at what they perceive as a crime. Anyone who organizes an event, puts out a book, has an exhibit or whatever the hell, they want to come to your door and mess with you and do phishing. Finding some kind of crime, anything at all, that your photos, videos, and of anybody doing something illegal, anything they can get you on. So, that's what they did. They drove me out. So as soon as we had that raid, I started looking for houses, and so I got the hell out. And now I live in an area where the Vandal squad don't have jurisdiction to come and raid my house for no reason at all. They need a little bit more evidence of wrongdoing before they can come and do that. But with that said, a couple of years back, the transit police did come up here and visit us. A couple of detectives drove up just to say hidey ho. We know where you're hiding.
Wow.
I know they're such bastards.
I can't believe that. I thought you were gonna say that you were tired of city life because of the traffic, and that you wanted just a more peaceful living where rent's probably cheaper. I had no idea. That's absolutely insane.
So I was overworked, overbooked, and overstressed. And when I go crazy, I take the husband with me. So we had to move. No, I bought this house straight out. No rent. Get out.
I want to respect your time. It's 5:49. I have to
Sure,
say
sure. Okay, well.
immense thank you for letting us come here, letting us see your beautiful studio, and just talking on the show. It's been an honor.
It truly is an honor. Thank you so much.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, you think you got something?
No, it was amazing. Thank you so much.